The official system of measurement for almost every country in the world, including Canada, is the International System of Units, abbreviated SI. It's commonly referred to as the metric system. And it's actually been around since around 1790. The metric system is a system where the numbers are, the units, the measurement units are described in two parts. They're composed of two parts. There's a prefix that describes the unit's size, and there's a base unit that describes the property being measured. So you're probably familiar with the units meter, liter, and gram. Meter is abbreviated with a lowercase m, and it's measuring length. And a referent is sort of a picture you can have in your head of how big is a meter? What does a meter look like? And it's about a giant step. And that, of course, is going to depend on how tall you are. Also, a doorknob is typically a meter above the floor. So there, you got a visualization of a meter. A liter, which is abbreviated with a capital L, measures capacity, or how much a container can hold. So the easy example for that is a 1 liter carton of milk. You live in Canada, you know what a 1 liter carton of milk looks like. Finally, we have the gram, which is abbreviated with a lowercase g, and that measures mass. And in common use, mass and weight are used interchangeably. They're not technically the same thing, and in science it matters, but in common usage, we talk about how much do you weigh? I weigh this many kilograms. But it technically is mass. And a single gram is about a paperclip. So gram is not very much, okay? Now you may be surprised that all of these things, the volt, ohm, Tesla, Coulomb, watt, Newton, joule, and Pascal, are also part of the metric system. And they all follow the same naming rules. So once you understand how the metric system works with its prefix and base unit, you can use that knowledge to do conversions with any of these units. We're not going to do that in this course, but the metric system is just so much more efficient than the imperial system, or what they call the customary system of units in the United States. It just makes so much more sense once you understand it, okay? So the metric prefix tells us how much of the base unit we're talking about. For example, the prefix kilo, if you look in this table, you can see that a kilo means 1,000. So a kilo meaning 1,000. So kilometer means 1,000 meters. And you're probably familiar with the ones that are shaded on this table: kilo, centi, milli. Those are the ones we use. Kilogram, centimeter, centiliter. Well, we don't use that one very much, but millimeter, we use that one all the time. Okay, milligram. Centigram we don't use so much. That's mostly for distance. We talk about centimeters, how long something is. Okay, and this table has more information in than you actually need. What you really want to know is the abbreviations, the symbols, and kind of should know the factors, but we'll get into that in a second. Okay, because we often use measurements other than the base unit, here's some other visualizations for what common measurements are. So a millimeter is about the length, the thickness of a paperclip. Centimeter is about the width of an adult baby finger. A meter is a giant step. Capacity and volume, I just want to talk about that briefly. The term capacity refers to the maximum amount that something can contain, and it's measured in liters. Volume refers to the amount of space that something takes up, and it's actually measured in cubic units. So cubic centimeters is usually what it's done. Oh, I've got a typo in here. That shouldn't have the liters there. Sorry about that. In reality, I've only ever seen this distinction made in math class, maybe science classes. So don't worry about it at all. We'll probably talk about volume because that's the language that people use when we're talking about liters. I just like to be technically correct. So there you go. Okay, so we know that a liter is like a liter of milk. A centiliter, 100 milliliters, is about half a cup. Sorry, a centiliter. That's 100 centiliters. Nope. That's right, 1 centiliter is about, see, we don't use centiliter. There's a reason for it. A centiliter is about half a cup, a little less than half a cup. A milliliter is the same as a centimeter cubed. And that's like an eyedropper full. It's a very tiny amount. So it's a little cube that's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by centimeter. It's not very much, okay? And mass, a kilogram, a liter of milk actually has a mass of about 1 kilogram, and a paperclip has a mass of about 1 gram. So there's some just reference that you can keep in mind, okay? What makes the metric system particularly efficient and user-friendly is that no matter which property is being measured, the same prefixes are used in the same way. So for example, what would you call 1,000 grams? That's 1 kilogram. Or 1 kilogram. 1,000 liters is then 1 kiloliter. Or 1 kiloliter. Okay? That was easy. What would you call 1/100th of a meter? Well, that's 1 centimeter. We go back up to our table on the previous page. 1/100th is right here, so that tells us centi. 1,000th is milli, okay? So if we know that 1/100th of a meter is a centimeter, 1/100th of a gram is 1 centigram. And what would you call 3 million liters? Well, let's go to the table. And million is mega, which is abbreviated with a capital M. So this would be, and there's 3 of them, so this would be 3 megaliters, or 3 capital M, capital L. Okay? The next thing for us to learn is how to convert units. And there's some conversions that you should be able to do just off the top of your head, and that is specifically converting from centimeters to millimeters. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can memorize stuff, but I'm not a fan of memorization. I'm a fan of making sense out of things. So you'll see this later on, but when you move from centimeters to millimeters, you're moving the decimal 1 space either to the left or the right, okay? So that means that 234 millimeters is either 23.4 centimeters or 2340 centimeters, depending on which way I move my decimal. Okay, those are the only 2 possible answers that it can be. Okay, so let's think about this. Am I going to have more centimeters than I had, or am I going to have fewer centimeters than I had millimeters? Okay, so centimeters are bigger than millimeters. So if you think about this, I've got like all of these are my millimeters. I've got 234 millimeters. And what I'm doing is I'm going to take every 10 of those and I'm going to call that 1 centimeter. I'm going to take 10 of those, that's going to be 1 centimeter. 10 is going to be 1 centimeter. So I'm going to have fewer centimeters than I had millimeters, okay? Because my centimeters are bigger and I'm taking chunks of my millimeters with them. I hope that made sense. Okay, let's do another example, converting from centimeters to millimeters. Same thing, my decimal is going to move one way or the other, so I'm going to have 14.5 millimeters, or I'm going to have 1,450 millimeters. Okay, am I going to have more millimeters than I had centimeters? Well, I'm doing the backwards of what I had there. I've got a centimeter and a centimeter and a centimeter and a centimeter, and each centimeter is now going to be 10 millimeters. Right? Because I'm just splitting it up into millimeters. So I'm going to have way more millimeters. They're smaller. So I'm going to have more. So my answer is going to be this one. And I realized I didn't actually answer the question up here. It's going to be 23.4 centimeters. Okay? You can also picture a ruler. You know, when you look at a ruler, it's divided up into centimeters divided up into 10 millimeters. So picture that in your head to figure out which way it's going to go. Okay. Converting units from one to another beyond the centimeter to millimeter is a little bit more challenging, but it's very straightforward. I do expect you to be able to move among these ones without me giving you a formula sheet. Okay, from kilo whatever to milli whatever. You should memorize this this table, or at least the first column of it. And so one thing that people do to remember things is using a mnemonic device or memory helper that helps you remember the order. There's lots of them that you can find. This is my favorite one. It goes killer hedgehogs, dance, and then you need something in here to hold a space for the base unit, which changes whether you're talking about cent or millimeter, liters or meters or grams or ohms or whatever. So killer hedgehogs dance, wild devil cats. Whoops. Devil cats meditate. And in my classroom, I actually have a drawing that somebody did for me of devil cats meditating, which is pretty funny. Okay, and the reason I like this one is that this is the only one that I've ever seen where there's a DA for dance, because the most difficult thing to remember is which is the DA and which is the D. Although after I came up with this hedgehogs dancing thing, somebody pointed out to me that deci is decimal, so it's got to be smaller, and deca, think of decade, which is 10 years. You all know that. So that makes it easier to remember which is deca and which is deci. But then you still have to remember which one is the DA and which is the D. So I guess maybe mine still helps. Dancing hedgehogs. All right. So the first step in any unit conversion is to determine the conversion factor. And there are always two ways to write any conversion factor. So for example, I can say that 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters, or I can say that 1 millimeter is 0.1 centimeter, because a millimeter is 1/10 of a centimeter. And you can use either of them, but you know my motto, be smart about your lazy. The first one's easier. Our brain works better with whole numbers or integers than it does with decimals. It just does. Okay, so make it easy. Go with the first kind, okay, where you've got one of something equals a larger number of something else. Okay. Okay, it's not reasonable to ask you to memorize all the conversion factors. If you go back up to the table, I'm not going to ask you to memorize what the conversion factor is from kilo to deci and from hecta to deci and hecta to centi. That would be silly. But there's easy ways to figure it out on the fly if you know the orders that the order the units come in, which is why we have our dancing killer hedgehogs, or killer hedgehogs dancing. I should keep it that way. So to begin, here's the plan. To begin, you want to write down your killer hedgehogs dance, and then base, which is while devil cats meditate. So you've got to write that down. I'm always going to write it going down the page with kilo at the top because that's the biggest one, and I'm lazy. And if I put the biggest one at the top, that's kind of how the world works. We go down, things get smaller. It fits in with all of the schemas I have in my head. Okay, so we've written that. We're going to find the unit that we're starting with, and we're going to count the number of steps it takes to get to the target unit, okay? And we're going to write the conversion unit as one of the bigger unit equals how many of the smaller unit. So, for example, we want to go from hectometer to centimeter. So I'm going to start at hecto, and I'm going to count how many steps do I go to get to centi. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 4 steps. The order doesn't actually matter whether I'm going up or down because I'm going to write, my hectometer is bigger, so it's going to be 1 hectometer equals some number of centimeters. And my number is going to be a 1 with 4 zeros after it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are four zeros. That's the key. Okay? Because there were 4 steps. All right? Don't forget to include the base unit. If you don't have the base unit in your list, it won't work. Okay? And there's a little bit more practice for you. Okay? And then come back for the last lesson. Okay, welcome back. Last lesson of this section. This is actually converting units. So there are many ways that you can convert from one metric unit to another. We're going to focus on the proportion method. A couple reasons for that. One is because, well, the unit is called proportional thinking. But more important is that the proportion method works to convert from any unit to any other unit. And you don't have to think about whether you're multiplying or dividing because you're using a proportion and we're going to cross multiply and divide. So you're actually doing both every time. So that makes it easier. Okay. All right. So here are the steps. And when you do the steps, it's essential that you do them in order. Okay. So step 1 is to set up the proportion, which is to write something equals something. Okay, and this something is actually a fraction. Okay, there's space above and below it, but that's the first step, and I've got that done for you already. Okay, step 2, you're going to write one of the larger unit in the question. And so the larger of centimeters and meters is meters. So I'm going to put 1 meter in the numerator of my first side of my proportion. Okay. Step 3 is how many of the smaller units do I need to make one of the large units? So if I don't know that offhand, I'm going to go killer hedgehogs dance, base unit, while devil cats meditate. And I need to go from meters, which is the base unit. So that's actually a source of confusion sometimes, is the M down here stands for milli, not meters. Meters is the base unit. So some people actually write this, instead of writing base, they write meters, liters, grams, because that's what fits in there, okay? 1 meter, 1 liter, 1 gram, 1 ohm, 1 Tesla, 1 coulomb, whatever. Okay, but we're just going to work with meters, liters, and grams. Okay, so I want to know from meters to centimeters, how many jumps is that? So that's 1, 2 jumps. So my number here is going to be a 1 followed by 2 zeros. Okay? Step 4 rather, is to match the units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this number here, which is the question that I'm given, and oh, I forgot to put my centimeters here. Can't do that. Okay. I need to put my 35.7 meters. It's either got to go on the top or the bottom, but I need to match my units, so it has to go on the top because that's where the meters are. Okay. And then I get a variable here. I'm going to put X, and that's going to be centimeters. All right. Last step. I'm going to cross multiply to solve. So X equals 100 times 35.7 divided by 1. Right? Multiply the pair, divide the spare. So you multiply the two numbers that are diagonal across the equal sign. Doesn't matter where the variable is, you're always multiplying the two that are diagonal across the equal sign, and you divide by the other one. And we get an answer, 3570 centimeters. And then, because you're in my world, you always have to ask DIMS. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? What does 35.7 meters look like? It's like, I don't know, the length of a yard, the length of a, it's sort of on that scale from the back of somebody's property to the front of their property. Is that thousands of centimeters? Yeah, that makes sense. That seems reasonable. All right, notice that this is very much like the proportion questions you did earlier. Actually, sorry, that's from a different class's notes. But do notice when we do proportions, I do talk about the first of the fractions is the recipe. So the 100 meters to 1 centimeter, or sorry, 1 meter to 100 centimeters, that's the recipe. That tells us what the conversion is. And the other one is the reality. The other one is what we're trying to figure out. All right. Okay, let's do a couple of examples now. Can I do this so you can still see the steps? Okay, so we're going to go from millimeters to meters. So a meter is bigger. So I'm going to put 1 meter on top. And how many millimeters in a meter? That's 1,000. That's one that you really should just know. But if you don't, you write it out, figure it out. And I'm given a number of millimeters, so I'm going to put that in the bottom in the denominator. And I'm going to have X meters in the numerator. So X equals 1 times 356 divided by 1,000. So X equals 0.356 meters. Does that make sense? 356 millimeters. Well, that's less than a meter, right? Because there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter. So 356 millimeters is less than a meter, and 0.356 meters is less than a meter. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, one more example. Decameters to centimeters. So I don't know what the conversion is from decameters to centimeters, so I'm going to write that out. I'm going to go killer hedgehogs dance, and then while devil cats meditate, and in this little spot here, I'm going to go meters, liters, grams. Okay, so decameters is here to centimeters is going to be 1, 2, 3 jumps. So 1 decameter is 1,000 centimeters because I need three zeros. And my decameters go on the top because that's where my decameters are, 43.2 decameters gives me X centimeters. So X equals 1000 times 43.2 divided by 1, and x equals 43200. 1, 2. Sorry, that's not the answer that I have in my answer key. I have a 4 there. Oh, I went to millimeters. That's why in my example. Okay. Anyway, this is the right answer. So, because it was a jump. It was 3 steps. Okay, so that's that many centimeters. Okay, DIMS. I'm definitely going to DIMS this question. A decameter. That's pretty big. Well, it's bigger than a meter anyway, so that's quite a long distance. Yeah, it's going to be thousands of centimeters. That seems reasonable. I went in the right direction anyway. That's the beauty of this thing, is you're always going to go in the right direction because you are multiplying and dividing. I also want to point out that I did write the divide by 1 on all of these questions, even though dividing by 1 doesn't change anything, but math is about habits, and getting math right is about having good habits. So if you are when you're doing cross multiplying and dividing, it should be your habit that you write down all 3 of the numbers involved, even if one of them is 1. All right. Another small detail is that when you're doing this multiplication across the equal sign, this diagonal thing, it doesn't matter which order you multiplied in, whether I did 43.2 times 1,000 or 1,000 times 43.2. It doesn't matter, because when you multiply things, the order doesn't matter. All right. And then, so now we've done some examples with lengths. I'm just going to do 2 quick examples with liters and grams, just so you've seen that it's exactly the same thing. Okay. So I've got liters and milliliters. Liters are bigger. I'm going to put 1 liter on top, and there's 1,000 milliliters in a liter. And I'm given a number of liters, so I'm going to put that on my line with my liters, which is the top, 719.41 liters, x milliliters. So x equals 1,000 times 719.41 divided by 1. X equals 719410 milliliters. Okay. And this one, I've got milligrams and decagrams. I'm going to do my little killer hedgehogs dance. Maybe I'll just put the grams down this time because I'm working with grams. That's my while devil cats meditate. And now I'm going from deca to milli. Well, I'm going to milli to deca. So I'll start here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 jumps this time. I'm still going to, it doesn't matter which order I count my jumps. I'm going to put the decagrams on top. So 1 decagram that's hard to read. I'm going to fix that. One decagram is going to be one with 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4 milligrams. Okay? So I don't want you memorizing that. I just want you counting it up. Okay? So 1 decagram is 1,000 milligrams. I'm given milligrams. Those need to go on the bottom because that's where the milligrams are. My unknown goes on the top. Cross multiply and divide. So I get the result that x equals 0.0269 milligrams. Oh, oh, I butchered that one. Oh no, that's right. I'm sorry. So x equals 0.0269 decagrams. There's our answer. Okay, so there are a couple of pages of practice work for you, including some word problems. All right, so go do your practice work, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.